I just need one open pass.
Before marriage?
Yes.
Then we're done.
There are moments in life when silence feels louder than any argument ever could. This is one of those moments. I'm a 34-year-old man. My fiancée was 33. 2 days ago, I ghosted her. Not out of immaturity, not out of spite, not to punish her. I disappeared because something inside me broke in a way I don't yet know how to fix. Right before our wedding, she asked for a temporary open relationship. I said no. She cheated anyway. Now I'm writing this while traveling back home, staring out a window, trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do next, and who I'm supposed to be after this. Because Jen and I weren't just a couple. We were history. Our parents were lifelong friends. We grew up together. Our families joked for years that we'd end up married before we even understood what marriage meant. We started dating as teenagers, almost like it had already been decided for us. When I left town to pursue my master's degree, Jen stayed behind, working toward her nursing degree. We tried long distance for a year. Eventually, we made the hardest choice we knew how to make, stepping back romantically and staying close friends instead of letting the relationship suffocate under pressure. At the time, it felt mature, healthy, like love evolving instead of dying. What I didn't know then was that this story wasn't ending. It was just quietly waiting for the moment it would hurt the most. And what happened next is the reason I don't know if I can ever look at her, or our shared past, the same way again. We both dated other people. But deep down, we both knew it felt temporary. Like we were just circling back toward each other eventually. After I graduated, I stayed in the city where I'd studied and started working in my field. I waited patiently for a transfer back home. When it finally came through, I was thrilled. Jen, at that time, was in a long-term relationship with a decent guy. I always sensed he was uncomfortable with how close we were, and I respected that. I stepped back. We still spoke a few times a year. The connection never fully disappeared. At work, my boss and mentor, I'll call him Paul, became an important figure in my life. He was in his mid-40s, sharp, direct, and someone who had seen enough of the world to offer real guidance. One day, Paul called me into his office and told me about an opportunity, a 2-year position overseas. Tokyo would be my base, with occasional travel across other Asian cities. The pay wasn't spectacular, but everything else was covered: housing, hotels, travel. He told me bluntly it wasn't glamorous, but it was a career accelerator. I thought about it, talked to my parents, talked to friends. Then I said yes. The first year was brutal. New culture, new social rules, constant adjustment. But something else surprised me too: attention. Everywhere I went, women were openly interested in foreigners. These weren't naive or uneducated people. Many were professionals, intelligent, confident. I was honest with all of them. I told them I wasn't staying long. I wasn't looking for commitment or marriage. I ended up extending my contract twice. Paul visited occasionally, sometimes for work, sometimes for vacation. I won't pretend we were saints. There were cities and nights I'm not proud of. When my contract finally ended, I returned home with savings, experience, and a down payment on a house just outside the city. After living among millions, I wanted space. About a month after returning, I was visiting my parents when Jen showed up. She had broken up with her boyfriend a year earlier. We started talking more seriously, then dating. I held back physically at first. Not because I didn't want her, I did, but because I knew something about myself had changed. I had developed unhealthy habits abroad. Too many partners. Too much detachment. I wanted control back before committing. Everyone knew I dated casually. Even Jen. My social media showed occasional photos with different women. My mother joked about it more than once. It stung more than I admitted. When Jen and I finally slept together, everything shifted. She was surprised. She said I wasn't the same. Not in a bad way, but different. More experienced. She asked questions. I didn't lie, but I didn't tell the full truth either. That was my mistake. Half-truths don't protect relationships. They plant insecurity that grows later. That night planted a seed of doubt in her mind. Our families were thrilled we were together again. It felt inevitable. After talking with her parents, I proposed. She moved in. Things were good, mostly. There were moments that bothered me. Questions about whether I was truly satisfied. Subtle insecurity. I brushed them off. Fast forward to December 2019. Wedding planned for June 2020. Then came the conversation that changed everything. Her cousin Tammy was visiting, helping with wedding plans. Jen asked to talk privately, but Tammy stayed close by. Jen told me not to interrupt, not to get upset. She explained that our differences in the bedroom made her fear I'd eventually cheat, that she didn't want our future children to suffer if that happened. Then came the question I still can't fully process. She asked if I'd consider opening the relationship temporarily, so she could gain experience and feel secure. She laid out rules. No repeats. No coworkers. No emotions. No one we knew. I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. I lost control. I yelled. I asked Tammy if she'd encourage this. She said she was just there for support. Jen then said I was free to do the same. I said no. I didn't want options. I wanted one person. Out of pure shock and anger, I said something I immediately regretted, naming Tammy, just to force her to confront how absurd this was. Jen reacted with disgust. I told her plainly, if she did this, we were done. I grabbed my pillow and slept in the guest room. We didn't speak properly for days. She left notes, texted, tried to normalize things. 2 weeks later, during her night shifts, I noticed an email on her computer. A hotel reservation near my office. My stomach dropped. The next day, she casually mentioned she only had one more night shift left. The math didn't work. I spiraled. I started searching dating profiles. Found nothing concrete. Paul noticed I was falling apart and suggested lunch at a hotel restaurant. The same one. And that's where everything finally collapsed. Paul didn't know this part yet, but we actually went out for lunch that day. I couldn't eat. My stomach felt hollow and twisted at the same time. I didn't even want water. Every thought made me nauseous. Paul finally looked at me and said, "You can't work like this. Take whatever leave you need. Paid, unpaid, it doesn't matter." That's when I told him the truth. I couldn't stay in my house anymore. I couldn't look at her. And even worse, part of me still wanted to believe none of this was real. I rushed home, threw as much of my stuff as I could into my car, and drove back to the office. That's when Paul said something I didn't expect. "Let's go sit at the hotel. Just wait. See what happens." Now listen, I'm not a private investigator. I'm not some detective out of a movie. I felt more like Inspector Clouseau than anything else. I resisted the idea hard. It felt wrong, desperate, but I had to know. So we went to the hotel lounge and sat there pretending everything was normal. I started drinking, fast, still hoping, praying that I was wrong. Around 6:30, Paul tapped me on the shoulder. She was standing at the front desk, not in her uniform. In that moment, every emotion hit at once. Rage, heartbreak, disbelief. I wanted to scream, cry, run, do something, anything. We waited about 10 minutes after she went up the elevator. Then Paul and I walked to the front desk. I asked the receptionist to connect me to her room. The phone rang, she answered, and I lost it. I don't even remember exactly what I said, just yelling, my voice shaking, her sounding confused on the other end. I told her I warned her. I told her this was over. Wedding canceled. Relationship finished. No second chances. I hung up and walked out. No closure. No conversation. Just done. Now I had nowhere to go, so I went back to Paul's place. My phone exploded. I ignored everyone except one person, my dad. I explained what happened in the most PG way possible and told him I needed to leave town immediately. It wasn't a debate. I regret how sharp I was with him, but I wasn't capable of being gentle then. For 2 straight days the phone didn't stop ringing. Friends, family, everyone. I didn't answer. The only way I can describe how I felt is this. It was like walking underwater. Everything slow, heavy, muffled. Paul tried to talk to me about finances, protecting myself, the house, the wedding expenses, the car loans. We had separate accounts, one joint for the wedding, one for the house. I didn't care. When emotional shock hits, the brain temporarily shuts down long-term thinking. That's why people often make bad decisions, or no decisions at all, during betrayal trauma. The next day I emailed Jen. Short, direct, final. I told her this would be our last contact. I was leaving the city. The wedding and everything attached to it was over. I called my dad again and talked for a long time. He was crushed, but he understood. He said he still hoped things could be fixed. I told him I needed space before I could even think straight. 10 days later, I boarded a plane to Bali. I ignored every message, every email. I didn't know if she stayed at the hotel or left that night, and honestly, I didn't care anymore. I landed in Bali and disappeared into a bottle for the next month. I stayed offline except for work and my dad. I didn't even care if I got fired. I wish I could say I found peace there. I didn't. I was mostly drunk, angry, ashamed, furious at how everything collapsed. After a few weeks, Paul asked if I could fly back to Tokyo to handle some work issues. We talked about the new global virus starting to spread. I mentioned possibly going back to Canada to close loose ends, but there were rumors of lockdowns. I arrived in Tokyo on March 1st. It felt good to work again, even if it was only temporary. Paul suggested I go back to Canada soon. I brushed it off. I told him it would probably be 30 to 60 days. 30 to 60 days. Yeah, that turned into another year. By then, I didn't want to go home. My house was rented. I talked to family regularly, but I refused to hear anything about Jen. Then on September 21st, I got the call. My dad had a heart attack. He survived. He was stable, but he needed a triple bypass. Serious surgery. Not as deadly as decades ago, but serious enough that I needed to see him. I knew going home would turn into chaos. I didn't want drama. I just wanted to see my parents, and thank Paul for standing by me even when I wasn't exactly easy to support. But I also knew something else. I was going to have to face her, and I had no idea how that would hit me. Update after landing. I went straight to see my dad. He looked good, strong, optimistic about the surgery. Mom was holding it together, but the worry was obvious. I spent nearly the first 24 hours by his side. We talked about everything, sports, memories, stupid jokes. Nothing heavy. I didn't want to stress him. I told him I was there for him, and that I was also using this trip to reorganize my life. Closing doors, opening new ones. On day 2, Paul and I met at a spot near the office. He was already drinking. We talked about my dad, work, and then he asked if I'd heard from Jen. I told him no. That's when he said the boss wanted to see me, but considering my dad's situation, it could wait. I told him we might as well get it over with. I had a list of things to confront this month. Seeing her was one of them. Walking into the office felt strange. Familiar faces gone. New ones everywhere. A few nods. A few greetings. We went upstairs to the old man's office, somewhere I'd never been before. He motioned for us to sit. He started with a long speech about responsibility and dedication. Honestly, some of his points were solid. Then he looked at Paul and asked why they should keep me around. Paul didn't hesitate. He listed the accounts I'd saved, the new ones I'd brought in. Then added, and good luck finding someone to do this job for 20% below market. That's when they both started laughing, hard, like something out of Goodfellas. The old man wiped a tear and told Paul that's why he was his best VP. I felt slightly insulted, until the old man leaned forward and looked at me. Kid, he said, I heard you had trouble with your woman. Let me give you some advice. He quoted someone, I don't remember who, but the point stuck. He talked about how men try endlessly to please women who are never fully satisfied no matter what you do. If God himself can't satisfy her, he said, don't kill yourself trying. That one hit. Not every failed relationship is a personal failure. Sometimes it's a mismatch of expectations, insecurity, and timing, not worth sacrificing your sanity over. As we left, it finally clicked. Paul was related to him. Outside, I asked Paul about the salary joke. He laughed, put his arm around me and said, you're not fired. You're promoted. Then he kissed me on the side of the head and said, I missed you, kid. And before I could process that, he said, let's get drunk. It was 8:30 in the morning, only Paul. We talked about work, about what was coming next, about uncertainty. Eventually, the conversation drifted where it always seemed to land. Jen, Paul told me something I didn't want to hear but probably needed to. He said I should meet her, face her, get real closure. Not the kind you convince yourself you have, but the kind that actually frees you. He said we both made mistakes. That didn't make us villains. Just flawed people who didn't know how to communicate properly when it mattered most. And until I resolved that chapter, I'd be dragging emotional weight into every future decision. Once that was handled, he said, then we could talk seriously about my career, where I wanted to go, and what kind of life I wanted to build next. At least one thing was settled. I still had a job. My dad was doing well. That gave me some peace. But Jen, she never really left my thoughts. I unblocked her on Facebook and scrolled through her profile, almost like I was bracing for impact. I wanted to see her before I saw her. Prepare myself. I finally sent a message. Simple. Polite. Asking if she'd be willing to meet for dinner. We exchanged brief pleasantries. No emotion. No nostalgia. We agreed to meet a few days later. Walking into that dinner, I was afraid of two things. Either the anger would still be there, and I'd explode. Or the love would still be there, and I'd fold. What I wanted was something in between, that uncomfortable gray space where clarity lives. All my mental preparation disappeared the second she walked through the door. She looked incredible. She smiled when she saw me, and my stomach climbed straight into my throat. I hadn't been this nervous even the first time we slept together. We hugged briefly. Awkward. Familiar. I caught the scent of her perfume, the one I always loved. My mind started racing. Was she here to manipulate me? Was she already with someone else? Was this going to turn into emotional warfare? She wasn't wearing any rings. Not even the one I gave her. We started by talking about my dad. She told me she always checked on him during her shifts and reassured me that his surgeon was one of the best. We danced around small talk, her insane workload during the pandemic, my lockdown experience in Tokyo. Inside, I was unraveling. I stayed calm on the surface, but underneath, everything was collapsing at once. I kept reminding myself I needed this, not for her, but for me. Eventually, the silence became unbearable. She looked at me and her expression changed. What followed is blurry, but I'll recount it as best I can. She started with an apology. Said she was deeply sorry for hurting me. I asked her the only question that mattered. Was she sorry she got caught, or sorry she destroyed us? She said she was sorry for what it did to me, to our future. She admitted she threw everything away because of her insecurity. I pressed further. Was it insecurity, or punishment? Punishment for my past relationships before we were together? She said maybe both. She told me something I never knew. Her ex before me cheated on her because he couldn't compete with how deeply she felt about me. That relationship ended because of it. She said she never planned to fall for someone else. She thought she could emotionally detach. Thought that even if I found out, we could work through it, like we always had. She was wrong. I told her the truth. I didn't need perfection. I didn't need experience. I just needed loyalty. She said none of those men ever came close to what she felt with me, and now she didn't even know if that feeling was real or just a fantasy built by expectations. It became too emotional. She excused herself to the restroom. The restaurant was half empty. Paul had come along for support and stationed himself in a closed-off lounge area. I looked over for reassurance. Instead, I saw him animatedly flirting with two attractive women, laughing, gesturing like an idiot. He noticed me staring, gave me a questioning thumbs up, then flashed me the middle finger with a smirk and went back to his nonsense. Classic Paul. Jen came back and we continued. She asked if I wanted to know what happened that night. I told her it didn't matter. It couldn't be undone. When I called the room, it scared her. She ran to the lobby, but I was already gone. I told her I wasn't there to relive the past. I wanted to move forward. She asked if I could forgive her. I told her yes, I did forgive her. She wasn't evil, just reckless and selfish in her choices. I admitted my own failures too. I should have been more emotionally available, more attentive. Still, my emotions kept swinging wildly, love, anger, regret, all colliding. Over the past few weeks, I'd been watching countless Reddit stories, seeing men destroy themselves after betrayal, turning pain into permanent identity. I promised myself I wouldn't become that guy. The old man's words echoed in my head. The masks, the appearances, the illusions. I asked myself a hard question. Did I even really know her? When she asked what I wanted now, I told her a story from our childhood. Once, when we were kids, a dog charged at us out of nowhere. Without thinking, I stepped in front of her, instinctively ready to take the hit. I told her that's what I'd done our entire relationship. I stood between her and the world, protected her, absorbed the damage, took the blows so she wouldn't have to. But this time, when I stood there giving her everything I had left, she stabbed me in the back. That's when she broke. Her head dropped. Her shoulders caved in. Quiet sobs filled the space between us. Then she slid the ring box across the table. I didn't touch it. For a moment I lost control. I said something cruel, something about the life we were supposed to have, the baby we might have had by now. The second the words left my mouth, I regretted them. I apologized immediately. That snapped me out of anger. The conversation softened after that, became human again. We talked realistically about the future, about boundaries, about family, about learning how to coexist without pretending the past didn't happen. Reconciliation was never an option. When she stood to leave, we hugged for a long time. Not as lovers, not as enemies, just two people closing a chapter neither of us knew how to finish before. Closure isn't about winning. It's not about instant forgiveness or pretending the pain never existed. It's about reclaiming emotional authority, so the past no longer controls where you're going next. If stories like this resonate with you, raw, honest, and painfully real, make sure you subscribe to Dark Infidelity Stories. Hit like, share, and leave a comment. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most.